Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Wednesday's edition, broadcasting from Delray Beach, Florida. Happy to have you here, and our guest, Jeffrey Dunetz. Happy to have you back on the show, Jeff.
I'm real happy to be here. Hi, everybody.
Hey, listen, folks, we got a lot of topics to cover today. I mean, the news has been breaking constantly. You know, we've got the president's announcement on the future of our troop levels in Afghanistan. We're going to cover that. The Minnesota police officer, get this, has already been indicted. This is shocking, folks. Mob rule. Riots in Portland, vandalism, businesses boarding up in Chicago. We're going to get into all that. Kamala, the Republicans are making a mockery of it now. They're putting her picture on milk cartons.
Yeah.
I can't make it up. Jeffrey's going to talk about the 73rd anniversary of Israel becoming a state and some of the relationships with Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin. And then we're going to get into some cases with the FBI directors talked about related to China. This is some shocking stuff. Politics 2024, we've always got good stuff for you on that. So Jeffrey, let's start it off here. The president made a major foreign policy announcement today, announcing that he's going to start initiating the balance of our troop withdrawals from Afghanistan by May 1st. A little bit for late, slight delay, but he's going to have all the troops out by a symbolic date of 9/11/21, 20 years after the anniversary. Jeffrey, if I was a nonpartisan looking at his speech today, I mean, we try to shoot fair and square here. I actually thought the president did a pretty good job on his presentation today. What say you?
Well, first of all, what he didn't mention is basically he was continuing Trump's policy.
Well, that's true.
Trump said, I want to get him out by the end of May. The thing that really disgusted me is the 9/11 date, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. That's like a sacred day.
No question.
Do you know what I mean? That's like, celebrating Christmas by going out drinking with your friends and getting drunk and broadcasting that.
Yeah, I can hear you there. Yeah, I thought that was also a flaw in his piece today. But I think if you sort of read the polling, how the public feels about this right now, I mean, we have kids serving in Afghanistan that were born after 9/11.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think his presentation, 20 years, the sacrifices made, the ongoing peace, just as an American, Jeffrey, I thought he made a pretty good case, to be honest with you. I mean, we criticized him a lot, but I think let's be fair. I mean, we try to be fair to the president when he makes a decision. And frankly, President Trump he was sort of, I think if the roles were reversed and Trump was president, it would be a similar outcome as to where we're going right now. Maybe not picking the 9/11 date, but I didn't really see this as too controversial, to be honest with you. And I know, like you and I are sitting here doing this show tonight, you'll see a lot on the cable networks about criticism of this coming from certain parts of the Republican base.
Well, Lindsey Graham already flipped out. But I haven't spoken to anyone today, but when Trump made the announcement about May, all my friends who served in the military in Iraq and Afghanistan said, he's right, we got to get out of there. We've been there too long.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Jeffrey.
And I kind of take my cue from them because they were there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they know better than me. As far as I go, yeah, I think we've been there long enough.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to ever use the term mission accomplished, and I know there was a lot of mission accomplished talk today, but the fact of the matter is there's been a great deal accomplished over there. And just like, again, the Russians learned it the hard way, and now we've been there 20 years, this is not a country that can be occupied indefinitely. And it's not strategic to the United States. Yeah, granted, for the reasons talked about on rooting out the terrorists that attacked us, yes. But Jeffrey, 20 years, I'm not going to fault the vice president, the president. About the only thing he said that it was a mistake was when he referred to himself as the vice president again. Well, but anyhow, I get where he was coming from his time as VP. I got it.
But if you want to talk about our mission was to make sure that Al Qaeda doesn't attack us from there anymore.
Right.
Guess what? Al Qaeda is not going to attack us from there anymore.
Nope. That is mission accomplished. And the rest of it, where we are right now, I tend to think this decision I'm guessing 75% of the American public are probably going to support it, if not more.
Oh, yeah. He made the right decision.
Yeah. He certainly did. All right, shifting away from foreign policy just a minute back to domestic policy. This situation in Minnesota, 10 miles north of Minneapolis, this is getting out of hand. I mean, police officer Kim Potter, 26-year veteran of the force, today was charged with second-degree manslaughter. I mean, Jeffrey, I mean, this is almost like mob justice. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't have had, but there's no investigation. They didn't follow what the man who was, I guess, the city manager said. We will, diligently review this and go through all this.
Oh, well, that was really stupid.
Well, I mean, he actually said the right thing from a due process perspective, and yet for following due process, he got fired by the mayor. And then now, in an effort to placate the mob, this 26-year veteran, who you can clearly see, from the tape, obviously didn't intend to kill the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Duante Wright.
Right? She shot him and go, oh, crap, I shot him.
Yeah.
She didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, but go ahead, Jeff, please.
What she was charged with is the equivalent of negligent homicide.
Yeah,
it wasn't like murder or anything else. I actually asked someone who lives in Minnesota. But the thing is that, I can't believe they turned it around in 24 hours.
Yeah, that's my whole point. I mean, if you do a thorough investigation of this, which would be warranted in any type of shooting, as best I can tell, I'm not a lawyer, but you typically would have a thorough investigation before bringing charges. Even Derek Chauvin, that who's on trial right now, George Floyd, wasn't charged in 24 hours. I don't think. I mean, it took a few days. But this situation here, again, an investigation may have concluded that this was the correct charge. I don't know. It's happened so fast. And bear in mind, I'm going to say something controversial. I've heard a few people say this, and it is controversial, but the fact is the subject, and I've heard varying degrees of what the warrant was outstanding for, and I'm not sure which is correct. So if you have information on Jeffrey, let me know, but I've heard everything from weapons to drugs. I don't know, and I don't want to imply.
I heard robbery.
It was robbery? Was that what it was?
That's what I heard. I mean,
yeah, I want to be very careful. We don't want to accuse, obviously, a man who's deceased we don't know. So we don't want to imply something, folks.
But with all these cases, George Floyd, all these cases, the incident happened because the person fought against being arrested. I'm not saying it was right.
Right.
But it also wasn't right that the person fought against being arrested. The other thing, though, is I've seen a picture of the handgun she had and the taser she had. I don't see how she didn't know the difference. And
agreed.
One is always on their strong side. If she was a righty, the gun would have been on her right-hand side and the taser would have been on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%.
I'm not saying that she did it on purpose, but I'm
saying of course not.
That's a bad screw-up.
Yeah, and a bad screw-up like that, a lot of people come on and say, well, it's indefensible. That may be true. Okay, she did resign effective immediately. I guess she recognized the error in her judgment. And again, we're not trying to make light of the fact that an individual is dead because of this.
Right.
And that happened, but it's just the fact that the same, in other words, even the fact that he was evading police, okay, you cannot make an excuse for killing someone in that case for the warrant. But, and again, it was not an intentional situation as evidenced by the tape and as evidenced by what she said. But my goodness, again, I'm not a cop, but I mean, I would think more than 24 hours, Jeffrey, to really get behind all the facts on this. I mean, there's no way you can conclude that just in one day and bring charges like this. It just seems to me.
So what Ben and Jerry did, the ice cream people, those idiots from Vermont.
I heard something. I didn't follow.
They're trying for they're saying they want to support defunding the police.
Yeah.
However, I heard of an incident last year where they got a threatening phone call and called the police to come.
Yeah, I mean, this defund the police stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, you can't.
So maybe just they shouldn't be allowed to use the police.
Yeah, well, I mean, here again, think about this issue in this case, and I'm sort of relating it back to what happened in Atlanta at the Wendy's. Again, you see this pattern. Again, if people, and again, every case is different, but in the same pattern in many of these cases, again, if, let's say he didn't resist. Okay, he gets arrested. He's out the next day. It's a misdemeanor. He does 1 day time served and moves on with his life.
Right.
And similar situations.
What I don't tell you is that, because I've got friends that are cops, the most dangerous situation they're ever in is when they stop a car.
No question about it.
There's so many times they get shot when that happens.
Oh, absolutely. And lay people don't realize this. They just, you turn on your mainstream media, your cable outlets, and you think, this is common ground when it's infinitesimally small. But what it does, Jeffrey, it suits the media narrative. And again, right when the defense is presenting their case in the George Floyd trial, Derek Chauvin, I mean, you literally could not have picked a worse time or place for another incident like this to happen. And again, folks, we're not going to come to the worst thing that happens in every one of these cases. People jump to conclusions, and that's 9 times out of 10, it's the wrong conclusion right up front. And again, it just borders on the fact that what was the reason this prosecutor within 24 hours delivered this charge? Again, it may end up being the right charge. I don't know. But I do know one thing. Mob justice, 24 hours on a charge when the man's not even buried yet. I mean, my God, this is
half an hour from my house on Saturday night. A cop stops a guy for driving funny. The guy comes out and stabs the cop in the leg, and he almost bled out.
Oh. And we've seen many of the cases.
And the only thing that saved him, that there was another cop who lived across the street that came out and did a tourniquet.
Yeah,
they don't report that.
These police officers put their life on the line, and again, thank God they didn't charge her with murder, because that would have been insane. But
they couldn't.
You couldn't do that. But here again, look what this has caused here. Now we have a situation in Minnesota. Yes. Is the fact that she was charged with that crime going to stop these, the rioting and the protest? Probably not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you've seen riots in Portland where they tried to burn down a police union building. You've seen businesses in Chicago boarding up in anticipation of the Floyd verdict, vandalism in Sacramento, and I'll also add peaceful protests in Dallas and Philadelphia. But Jeffrey, it's almost like, the country is gearing up for an outcome in the Floyd case that may not meet the media narrative.
That's right.
And again, I when I look at some of the mainstream media and some of the cable reporting, when I start hearing words like, well, it only takes one juror to block a conviction. Well, we've known that from the beginning. That's why you don't bring specific charges unless you're damn certain you can get a conviction.
That's right.
So you're starting to hear, it's almost like, well, it only takes one. And I just get a sense, I have no idea which way the verdict's going to go. I haven't had time to follow the trial that closely. But I do know that they're in the defense portion right now. And at some point, probably later this week, early next week, that's going to end, and then this thing will go to a jury. And when I hear things like businesses boarding up, and it just has a ring to it, Jeffrey, like it's almost like, well, something's going to blow the gasket here if this thing doesn't go the way the media is thinking it will.
That's right. And actually, I just posted something. I'll send you the link later. There's a social justice social media person encouraging people to loot in Minnesota.
That's disgusting. That's terrible. President Biden came out and said there is no justification for looting whatsoever. He has repeatedly said that. So, I mean, I support the president coming down on the right side here. I understand the frustrations. I really do. But at the same time, you can't, every time these incidents happen, you can't make it an excuse to go out and loot. And that's frankly what's been happening. And at the end of the day, Jeffrey, who gets hurt? The people in the community get hurt.
That's right.
Yeah, in the business.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So,
matter of fact, there was a story of someone this morning who, during last summer's riots, his store was destroyed, and he just opened up 2 weeks ago. And last night, his store was destroyed again.
That's awful. I mean, look, yeah, it's not just these big cities we're talking about. There was an issue in Columbus, Ohio yesterday, drawing protests. Apparently there was a shootout at a hospital, and someone's 27-year-old African-American man got killed. I don't know by whom or what, anything behind it, but it almost seems, Jeffrey, like we're headed toward a repeat of summer, and that wasn't a pleasant time period during the pandemic, to be going through this. So I just hope the country has some calmness and obvious faith in our justice system, because this verdict, again, Jeffrey, it could go either way in this Floyd case. We don't know.
And there's something else brewing in Congress. I mean, they're about to pass slavery reparations. And the House will pass it. I don't think the Senate will.
Right.
And that's going to cause some stir also. Yeah. Although I sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi this morning asking if I'm going to get slavery reparation. Look, I'm a descendant of slaves. They were slaves in Egypt, which is in Africa. That means I'm a descendant of African slaves. Granted, it was 3,500 years ago, but no one they want to give money to now was a slave. They're descendants of slaves. Yeah, I haven't heard back from her.
You may not hear back on that one. That may be a tough one. Speaking of that, okay, and obviously, we're going to shift around a little bit here. The vice president is still missing in action at the border. And yet today they came out, I guess, to appease the media, which means maybe the Biden administration on certain aspects is going to be held accountable by their propaganda arm. But apparently the vice president is going to go to Guatemala and to Mexico, but still nothing on the border. And Republicans did something so hilarious today. I saw Steve Scalise, number 2 Republican in the House, with a picture of Vice President Harris on a milk carton saying missing. I mean, Jeffrey.
That's right.
I mean, give us some feedback here on this.
Well, first of all, they're not explaining the real reason why she's going to Guatemala and Mexico. You know that donut shop she went to in Chicago? They're opening up branches in Guatemala and Mexico. So she's going there to taste the donuts.
Yeah, this is a pretty bad PR effort. Whoever's handling the PR on this they could do a little bit better. I mean, look, you and I know the reason she doesn't want to go down to the border. It's ugly down there. There's satellite pictures of increased migrant facilities that are 50% more facilities than they were before. Places are full. She doesn't want to sully herself with having to do the dirty work down there. I mean, and frankly, the president hasn't gone down there either. So I mean, again, say what you say about former President Trump, but he took a lot of trips to the border. And Jeffrey, you're even having a situation now where Customs and Border Patrol, ICE agents are requesting the Biden administration go back to Trump's policies.
Yep.
You and I know it's not going to happen, but the people who are actually charged with enforcing that border are saying, hey, this is not working. This crisis is getting worse. And yet, it's clearly a crisis. I don't want to take anything from what the president did because we agree with that, but this has got to be dealt with. This problem is not going to go away just because they wish it would go away.
But he has to serve the far left.
That's right.
And they like the border crisis because they want more people coming into the country because they think eventually they're going to vote Democratic.
Well, they may be in for a rude awakening on that one. They may end up losing some of their own Hispanic supporters, as we've talked about. But yes. Jeffrey, I think they're doing it to cover up some of the other things. I mean, look, say what you want. Biden's got a ton of stuff on his plate right now. Okay. We've got a crisis at the border. He made the decision on Afghanistan. The Russians have 80,000 troops on the border with Ukraine.
Right.
You got, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later, you got the Chinese economy. Let's segue into it right now. The FBI director came out, they shockingly, 2,000 open cases of investigation related to the Chinese Communist Party. Jeffrey, that's astounding.
Scary. But let me tell you something that Biden is doing right. He hasn't touched the Trump tariffs on China. They're still happening.
They are.
And they were successful.
Yeah.
What he's doing wrong is he's not enforcing the trade agreement they had.
Explain a little bit more for our audience on that.
Okay, about a year ago, Trump, sometime in 2020, early 20, actually it was November 2019, he did the first step of a trade agreement with China. They had to buy, and I don't remember the amount, X billions of dollars of stuff from the United States. They had to not steal our technology, and they couldn't play around with their currency, because what they were doing is they were devaluing their currency.
That's
so
right.
United States products would become more expensive in China.
Yeah, it was an agricultural deal.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was.
First step was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But also it had a technology component.
No, sure, absolutely.
And he hasn't been enforcing it. They didn't buy what they're supposed to buy. They're certainly stealing our technology, okay? And they're playing with their currency. And if we want to stay strong economically, we have to enforce that agreement. It's as simple as that.
No question about it, because China is their economy. I mean, you look at some of the stuff they do in their economy, and it's a top-down economy, folks. They don't have to, quote, get Democrats and Republicans to agree. Whatever the CCP says goes. And that's how there are certain things in that type of situation that make it more efficient than what we do as a capitalist society. But in the long run, we're going to have to address this and deal with them. But speaking of...
The one thing that it destroys is the motivation to do your job well.
Of course. Yeah, no question. No question.
And if you don't have the motivation to do it, the economy is going to suffer.
Well, in China, there's a lot of reasons you want to do whatever the CCP tells you to do, and better do it well, because your life expectancy sort of depends on it. So, all right, Jeffrey, now's a good time. Today, 73rd anniversary of the creation of the State of Israel. Why don't you talk to our audience a little bit about that, the significance, the meaning of that, and then sort of the relationship that the Biden administration has, with Israel, despite, saying the usual things that politicians say related to Israel.
Well, first of all, I say that, when people say that God doesn't do miracles, the creation of Israel 73 years ago was proof that God still does miracles. And if you don't believe me, ask George Burns in that movie, Oh God. He says the last miracle he did was the 69 Mets. But anyway, it wouldn't have been able to remain a state for more than a week if Harry Truman didn't overrule General George Marshall, who basically said, you better not do this. You better not recognize that state, because if you do, I'm not going to vote for you for re-election. I mean, that's how dirty it got.
Oh, yeah.
And Truman, with everything he did, not even Israel, he did things that he thought was right. He didn't care about the political implications.
That's true. And the people of Israel have sort of a gratitude to President Truman for taking those actions.
That's right. As a matter of fact, the chief rabbi of Israel said to Harry Truman, God put you in your mother's belly, so one day you would become the hero of Israel.
And he
cried.
To this day, the people of Israel do recognize that achievement. And, Jeffrey, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, there was absolutely no question President Trump's loyalty, respect for Israel, his relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu. And there are people now that are not of the same confidence level of the Biden administration and that U.S.-Israel bond.
Well,
again, anecdotally,
it was such a big change, because you had Barack Obama, who was not only anti-Israel, but the most anti-Semitic president we had since FDR. And I know some liberals think FDR is God. You know that during the Holocaust, FDR didn't want to let Jews in the country because he thought we had enough Jews in the country already?
I wasn't aware of that. No.
Yeah. Okay. And I have documents that show that. It's not something I'm making up. Okay. And then you go to Trump, who he wasn't pro-Israel. He was flattened it out. Okay. You know, Israel wanted to annex Judea and Samaria, what most people think of as the West Bank. Trump said, don't do that. And if you don't do it, I'm going to get you peace partners. And that's how the whole Abraham Accord stuff started.
And he did.
Yeah. And he did. Okay. So, I mean, he was tried to be fair on both sides, except the Palestinians didn't like Trump, so they wouldn't talk to him in the last 2 years.
Well,
John Kerry told the president of the Palestinian Authority, oh, don't listen to Trump. He's going to be out of office in a year.
And they did. That's pretty much what happened.
But this was actually the first year. But since Biden got elected, he's returned to the policies of Obama, maybe even worse. Okay.
Now, recently, General Austin and President Obama were making reference to supporting Israel. Now, square that one with us, Jeffrey, because on paper, you don't know virtually, I'd be careful about saying it. A vast majority of American politicians have a very favorable view towards the relationship between the United States and Israel.
Not quite. A majority of those who lean right of center.
Well, clearly that, but even some of the
leftists don't.
Not the far leftists, and no question about that. But even moderate Democrats are reasonably supportive of Israel because let's just face it. I mean, it's been that way for a long time. Now I know the left, and I'm saying again, if we split the country and say 20% far left, 20% far right, 60 in the middle, what I'm saying is I think obviously the 20% of Republicans on the far right and probably a good majority of that 60% would be supportive. Obviously, the far left, that 20 and that other fringe are not going to be supportive of all. And there's evident statements by many of them, the Rashida Tlaibs of the world, Ilhan Omar's, etc. I could lump them all in. You're never going to get anywhere with those type people.
Right. And you know what? You look at last year or the year before, Al Sharpton had his 65th birthday party. And you see the lineup of Democrats that kissed his ring and made speeches about what a wonderful human being he is.
Yeah. No, but I mean, be specific here, Jeffrey, because now Austin and Biden, Lloyd Austin, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and Biden, they're singing the right song, but it doesn't look like they're reading off the same sheet of music to me.
Well, my problem really isn't with Austin. My problem is that he either hasn't been reading the paper, or as I said in my post, Biden's been blowing so much smoke up his butt that he doesn't know what's really happening. Okay. Because, for example, last week, Blinken, the Secretary of State, announced that we're going to refund UNRWA, which is the relief agency for the UN.
Yeah.
Okay. Not only has that agency allowed the terrorists to use their facilities, even schools, as a place to store missiles and as terrorist bases, but they push this thing. They say that there are 5 million Palestinian refugees because they not only count the people who are refugees, but their children, grandchildren, second cousins, once removed, everybody. The actual number of people who left Israel in 1948 that are still alive is about 30,000, not 5 million.
Yeah, that's true.
And we're giving them more money.
Yeah, sometimes you just, again, that's something would not have happened under a Trump administration. Just flat out would not have happened. So,
well, we're also rejoining the UN Human Rights Council. That's not their job since it was formed is to investigate, make resolutions that are against Israel. But our UN ambassador today said that we're rejoining the council because America started and was initiated with racism.
Oh God, that crap again. I mean, you know, when you hear that now, it's almost like an automatic tune out, because that's the buzzword that the liberals use and the far left wing radical kooks. And when I hear it now, I just tune it out, because it's meaningless. When everything's racist, nothing's racist.
That's how they push everything, though.
Yeah, that's how they try to. Yeah.
But my question is if the liberals believe that everything is racist, and they also believe that everything is infrastructure. So is racism infrastructure, or is infrastructure racist?
You can't get me started. We talk about this all the time, all the garbage they're trying to pump into this bill, and that bird brain senator out of New York, Gillibrand, coming out and basically saying, oh, childcare, it's infrastructure. This is infrastructure. I mean, one thing about the Democrats, and I give them credit for it, they don't care if they lie. They get on message, and especially the left wing of the Democratic Party, and they stick to it, even though they know damn good and well the majority of stuff in that bill has nothing to do with infrastructure. So give them credit for trying, and sometimes they're successful. So
Biden is trying to get us back in the JCPOA.
Of course he is.
Now, I have a list of stuff. I've done tons of posts because I used to work for a site that only talked about the JCPOA. First of all, America was lied to about the deal. There's so many things in the deal we weren't told about, okay? Including
what Jeffrey's referring to is the Iran-U.S. nuclear deal. That's
right. My favorite thing is that, what do you call it? Iran gets to self-inspect its military.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I always say is my friends who went to Catholic school always tell me that the nuns tell them if they self-inspect, their eyes are going to go bad and they're going to grow hair on their palms. Okay. But besides that, there are so many things that we were lied to about. Okay. Then the person he picked to do the negotiation, this guy, Robert Malley, has spent a career writing lies about Israel.
Yep.
And when he was growing up, his father was close friends with Yasser Arafat. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and you knew with John Kerry getting back in the mix, anything that he's involved with. And again, Biden didn't make it any secret. He said when he was campaigning that he was going to try to put the U.S. back in the JCPOA. And this is no surprise, Jeffrey. This is campaign promising, and he's trying to keep it. So again,
do you remember when they impeached Trump because they said he wasn't giving money that was supposed to be given to Ukraine?
Yeah, of course.
2 years ago, Congress, both parties and both houses, passed something called the Taylor Force Act. Okay. What that said is that we can't give any economic aid to the Palestinians until they stop paying the terrorists and their families blood money.
Yeah, that's been happening for a while.
Okay. Biden just announced that he's going to give them $75 million in economic aid. Yeah. That's against the law.
You knew it was coming. Yeah, it is against the law, and you don't hear a Democrat raising a peep about it.
Nothing. Not even the ones that you thought would be supportive of Israel, like my idiot Senator Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, no, Schumer. Don't get me started.
Well, I actually every once in a while send the picture I have of him making a toast to Al Sharpton. And ask him why.
Yeah, it's just insane New York politics, and it's getting worse up there. All right, let me shift away from New York and let's shift back here domestically. We finally got some decent news today, albeit maybe it's too little, too late. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court came out today and said the governor of that state does not have the power to limit how the seating is in restaurants during a pandemic. I use the term better late than never. So, Jeffrey, again, at least somebody stepped up and is doing something the right way in Wisconsin.
Well, also the Supreme Court did it a little this week too, because I think it's the second or third time they told California they can't mess with your religious freedom because of and this time they said, okay, we've done this before to the Ninth Circuit Court, who keeps sending them the cases. We've said it twice before. Enough.
Yeah, that was a ruling basically happened 4 days before the law was going to expire anyhow. So it's a nice Pyrrhic victory. But I mean, in the practical sense, I don't think it's going to mean much because you picked up basically 4 days. But that's true. I mean, better to have it happen than not have it happen. Let's talk a little 2024 politics.
Okay, I have an announcement to make. Okay,
there we go.
Do you know how our former UN ambassador said that she will not run if Trump runs?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I promise I'm not going to run if Trump runs.
That's a big news.
The difference is I'm not going to run if he doesn't run either.
Here's the interesting piece. And she's not in favor with his favor right now because of some previous criticism. But the fact of the matter is, since we don't know what the former President Trump's going to do, people like Tim Scott of South Carolina, Rick Scott of Florida, Senator from Florida, Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, all four expressing interest in a potential run for president. And there's an event coming up in Iowa related to the 2024. And guess what 4 people are going to be there? Tim Scott, Rick Scott, Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo.
And some are calling it the "if Trump doesn't run" caucus.
I applaud all these guys because, again, it's a long time. I mean, Trump himself has said he's focused on the 2022 midterms, rightfully so. You and I both know if the president endorses a candidate, the likelihood in a Republican primary is that person's going to win.
Yep.
I mean, you can call it what you want, but President Trump is still the 800-pound gorilla in the Republican Party.
Right.
Yeah. And so, again, I like all these guys. Tim Scott, Rick Scott, Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo. They're all good. Okay.
Yeah, I like Tim Scott and Pompeo a lot better than the other two.
Respectfully.
Personal.
Yeah.
My favorite is still your governor.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis too. Ron's getting a lot of play. I mean, he's got a high approval rating here in the state of Florida, and for a lot of good reasons why. But DeSantis may have his name in there. And again, Ron DeSantis has to win a race for governor in 2022, which he has to run against. That's when his term. So we'll gauge Ron DeSantis' popularity by how he does in that 2022. But folks, we bring it up because, again, very narrow margin in the House, 50-50 in the Senate. I mean, folks, it's an evenly divided country. And yet the way the left is governing, the way the president is governing, you would think it was a massive Democratic sweep when it wasn't. And, of course, the media lies every day, and they tell you, about how great all the far left-wing policies are. Jeffrey, you and I both know 2022 right now, again, keep your fingers crossed, but it is shaping up as a pretty good-looking year for Republicans at this point.
Yep.
So far, so good.
Don't forget, Mike Pence just announced his PAC.
Yeah, he did. Throw Mike Pence in there. Yeah. So, I mean, but the question's going to be, then President Trump will make that decision, I assume, after the 2022 midterms. But it's fascinating to watch it. I mean, folks, this is the preseason in politics. But again, you're starting to see some names emerge of people who will or will not. And we'll keep an eye on it for you, and we'll give you.
And I have to be honest. I mean, I wrote something the other day. Trump lost his net worth went down by about a third since he became president.
Yeah.
His net worth went down, and he spent 4 years getting crapped on by the media, everybody.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't run, not because I don't want him to be president, because I don't know how anyone could put up with that.
I will say this about the president. I mean, he has a tendency. One of the reasons I thought he ran in the first place, and I trace this all the way back to when Barack Obama cracked the joke at Trump during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I think that was when he said to himself, you know what, buddy, I'm going to run and I'm going to whip your party. I've got no evidence. It's just a gut feeling I have because following him over the years, it just seemed like something went off at that point, and his focus turned to it, and well, the rest is history.
By the way, they announced today they're canceling Nerd Prom again this year.
Yeah, I know. 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. Hey, we did have one loss today, and this guy's a really good guy. Not lost, but he's just after 13 terms retired. Kevin Brady, folks, from Texas. He represents an area, the Woodlands, outside of Houston, really nice area. He's been 13 terms in Congress. When the Republicans were in charge, he was chairman, of the House Ways and Means Committee and the taxation. And, it was interesting, Jeffrey, one thing he cited as a reason why he is retiring is in the likelihood that Republicans take back the House in 2022, which they appear they have a good shot at it. He's term limited out based on the internal rules from serving as chairman again. So I guess he figured, look, I've had 13 terms. It's enough. Give somebody else a chance. He's in a reliably Republican district, subject to him being redrawn, but a good guy who has always had a great attitude, good demeanor. He'll be missed in Congress.
And he's economically conservative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So say again.
We need that now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. So we'll miss Kevin Brady. But again, I feel we'll get a good Republican out of that district. So, Jeffrey, a couple minutes left. Close us out on some good things happening in the country as you see them. I know there's a few good things happening that you can relate to.
Well, I'm really looking forward to next Thursday. Not because of Biden giving his State of the Union, but because it's the NFL draft.
Okay, that's positive.
And I don't follow pro football. I'm a New York Jets fan, which there's nothing professional about them since 1970. But they traded their quarterback, and they're going to draft a quarterback. It's kind of like the way Cuomo goes through women, the Jets go through quarterback. Oh, by the way, I actually invited Cuomo yesterday. You heard what he said about the Jewish holiday of Sukkot.
No, I didn't.
There's a Times article where apparently when he was running for New York DA, he complained about those Jews and their effing tree houses. They're talking about on Sukkot, you build a hut, basically. 4 sides, but no roof, okay? And so I invited him to my house after I told him it wasn't an effing tree house, it was an effing hut. and that maybe we don't F in that hut. Maybe he thought so because based on the news about him lately, he'd do anybody at any time in any place, even if they don't want him to. But he's still around.
Yeah, of course he is. Yeah, 10 and counting, but he's not going anywhere. So, again, we'll see how the Democrats treat. I know the Attorney General's investigating him, but again, right now, no news is in his favor. So,
well, but that's also another sad thing. Lee Zeldin, New York won the district next to me.
Right.
Isn't running for Congress. He's running for governor.
He'll run for governor. I saw that. Yeah.
And he is great in Congress.
He is. He's an exceptional congressman. Yeah.
And I wish he would
stay in Congress.
Right.
Yeah.
I went to senator.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. He's a good guy, but people have their ambitions.
But on the side, the economy is starting to come back.
Yeah.
Unemployment is down.
Yep.
And if we can keep the Democrats' hands out of our pockets and the pockets of industry, Trump was right. It'll be a V recovery.
Yeah, I heard my closing comment to this. I listened to Jerome Powell be interviewed today on Bloomberg News, and Powell really unabashedly came out and they are going to let some inflation get above 2% and let it run a little bit hot for a while. He gave no indication that all interest rates would be going up this year. 2022 sort of hedged his position a little bit. But then in the afternoon, another Fed governor came out and said, we don't have any plans anywhere in the near future to raise rates. They talked about the fact when they quit buying bonds that they're not going to just start selling them. They're just going to let them run off. Folks, these easy money policies are going to continue. You're starting to see some pretty decent numbers on the inflation side. But that's what the Fed and the federal government want. And it seems like governments all around the world are trying to do the same thing. So, I mean, the forces are so big in this, folks. Don't be shocked when you see higher gasoline, housing prices going up, food prices going up. It's going
already jumping up.
It's already happening. It's a lagging period of time. But again, the economy is growing, and it should be a good year for us this year. That's sort of my closing comment on,
Right.
you know, we're one more thing, 30 seconds.
One more thing, okay? If anybody's our age and remembers when Jimmy Carter was president, or if you haven't, remember the word stagflation, because based on the policies we're facing now, we're going to face stagflation again.
That's a risk factor. Powell sort of, you know, again, I don't know if he can pull it off, but Jerome Powell gave us firm indication. He knows what he's doing. The Fed knows what they're doing. They know how to control it. I'll be happily surprised if that turns out to be the case. But for right now, folks, again, enjoy the ride. Stock markets are near an all-time high. Jobs are coming back. Economy's going to grow 6 to 7%. And America is bouncing back and is booming. So,
and it's still the best damn country in the world.
No question about it.
More freedom than anything, despite what the Biden Hate America administration says.
Folks, thanks for watching today. Jeffrey, always a pleasure having you on. Love having you as a guest. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. Have a good evening. Stay safe. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.